The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hi, this is Ashley Eckstein, the voice of Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars episode 101.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Just a quick reminder off the top, please be sure to share the podcast on Twitter or Facebook or your favorite social media. And definitely please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and where you're listening to the podcast from, because that gets us seen by more people, especially those who would be interested in hearing us talk about all things Star Wars. So today we are discussing the 7th episode of Star Wars Visions. This one is titled The Elder. And joining me tonight on the panel is, first up, we have Thomas Sanherho, aka Ronan.
It's great to be here.
It's so good to have you on. Next up is Mike Creevy, also called Old Ben.
Hey everybody, good to be back.
And finally this evening is Angela Cialana, or the Bendu.
I am the one in the middle. Hello.
So we're gonna just kind of jump right in because there wasn't a whole lot in news things to talk about. So I'll kind of throw it off to you guys. First of all, what did you guys think of this episode of Visions?
I loved it. It's definitely, interestingly, I think it's out of a lot of them the most true to Star Wars in the way that we know it, like lore wise. Mm-hmm. And then it's also been the most kind of stylized after a really traditional that showdown samurai versus samurai concept. So it took the best of both worlds, in my opinion. This is the one that like really got the spirit of Visions right in a very big way.
That's kind of how I felt too. I don't know if I don't know if you guys know this, and we can maybe get into it later or not. Doesn't matter, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things. But I might have missed it if it came out in some of the preliminary stuff about Visions, what exactly the instructions were, so to speak, from Lucasfilm as far as what time frame we're looking at here. Because I think one of the most surprising things to me from the beginning, I think, was just how short they are. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a challenge for me on some of them. Some of them I thought there was like, well, okay, got it. You know, like I personally didn't think I needed a whole lot more from the Rock Band one. I enjoyed it. I thought it was just as long as it needed to be. What's that?
You didn't want an encore?
Maybe if I'd been there, where it was. But no, I agree with Thomas. I think this one felt, for me at least, I think this felt the most sort of organic, maybe Star Wars. I'm guessing High Republic, maybe based on some things in it. But I'm sure we'll get into that. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd have to say I enjoyed it as well. And I was surprised by it because when I saw that it was created by the same studio that created the twins, it felt very different. Although I found out later that the two, I guess, creative heads of the studio each took one episode. And so there is some, creative difference there, obviously. But for everything that you said, I agree. And also just, I felt like it was too short. I felt like there could have been so much more that we saw from these characters, this planet, I was invested. So I did enjoy it.
I kind of feel like a broken record here, but I totally agree with you guys. this felt almost like the kickoff of, almost like the Duel, where like it spawned a novel. Like this was almost the same sort of thing, as you could have another story wrapped around this Jedi and his apprentice. And I was surprised by the slow pace of it. And I'm assuming that was intentional and reflected the cultures behind it, but I don't know, I guess I was thinking of like the twins or some of the others, or maybe just coming off of TOB1, where it's just sort of like quick and everything. This one sort of almost forced me to just like take a breath. And I appreciated that. I loved the dynamic between the master and the apprentice. I'm not sure if we were supposed to be thinking about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, but that's exactly what I was thinking about.
I was.
Yep. And I really appreciated, like, you have the energetic, youthful Padawan, and then the master, like, his voice is like, almost deadpan. He's like calm and collected, and nothing's gonna rile him up. And I liked that dynamic. And I just noticed a bunch of parallels with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan too. You've got the master and apprentice situation. You've got even Qui-Gon is a bit just kind of more calm and collected between him and Obi-Wan, at least in episode 1. And you've got the master having a green blade and the Padawan having a blue blade, which I thought was fun. And you've got this sort of parallel when they fight the Elder with like the fight with Darth Maul as well. So I kind of I liked all of those kind of elements, because that was my lens that I was kind of watching this through. So I did really appreciate that. A couple other random points to note. So David Harbour did the English dub for the master, and he's Alexei in Black Widow and Hellboy. So he's kind of a face that many of us probably know. And then
from Stranger Things. It's like
you're missing the biggest
one.
I haven't seen that. I don't know if
Oh my gosh, he's Hopper in Stranger Things. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, legendary character, but very different from this character. So I was impressed by that.
And then Dan was voiced, at least in the English dub, by Jordan Fisher. And I at least know him because she showed up in the latest season of The Flash as Barry Allen's future son. So I thought that was cool. But
I was most excited about the voice of the Elder, but we might get there later.
Please jump into that, because I didn't actually know that actor.
So James Hong, he's been in a lot for a very long time, and I must confess, I thought he was dead. He's one of those actors where I have this false memory of having heard that he passed away recently. So then I started trying to do this thing of like, when was this recorded? But he's alive and he's 92. So
wow.
Good for him. But he's been in so many things. Off the top of my head, I can't. The only one I can think of is Balls of Fury, which is the ping pong movie, which is ridiculous and funny, and Christopher Walken's in that. But he's like the sage, like ping pong Yoda type, character in that. But he's done a lot of comedy stuff. But this, he creeped me out big time as far as voicing it. And I must confess, I didn't listen to it without the dub, so I might go back and do that too. But I thought he did a convincing job.
Is that common, Thomas, for kind of the bad samurai to be that kind of chaotic and expressive?
It depends. This really kind of harks back to the kabuki play, where it's very much more of a stylized representation. And so what you have here is actually a demon, a bakemon or an oni, that's fighting against the samurai. And so the samurai learns from the demon, because the demon is doing things improperly, but it's still challenged to beat them. And that's kind of like, if anybody who's ever done any martial art knows that the worst person to be pitted against is the newbie, because you have no idea what they're going to do. Like with anybody else, you can predict what's happening. With the newbie, you're just like, I don't really know what's going on here. And in this case, you have that kind of turned on its head, where it's a chaos that's intentional, and that's kind of the way this person's fighting. And so you really have this beautiful play on that concept of the swordsman, the master swordsman, having to fight against an unknown and to develop himself and learn while he's fighting. And yeah, there's a long tradition of that in the samurai, like in the way it's written. I have books and books and books that have pictures of like the tengu or the bakemono fighting against the samurai, and the samurai having to learn forms from them.
That's so cool.
Yeah. I was geeking out with this one. This is like, I was like, yes, this is so neat.
Well, and it adds a lot more context to the fight than like just a simple like, well, they fought and the bad guy lost. You know, there's a lot more going on than just what's being seen even. So we'll get to that, but let's jump into at least the recap, and we can kind of and yeah, we'll ultimately end up at the fight scene. So this episode starts off with the Jedi Master and his apprentice Dan, and they're heading to the Outer Rim. And Dan is an ambitious, and he wants to see the galaxy and wants excitement and action. And he's almost disappointed that the Outer Rim is so peaceful. I feel like I imagine many of us could relate to that, at least maybe in our younger years, when we're kind of, you know, just trying to like even heading off to college and have these kind of big dreams for ourselves and the world. And I feel like at least I could relate to Dan in that way, because that's kind of the romantic sort of like, I'm going to save the world kind of you know, thing that sets us on our path. And we get pulled back down to earth pretty quickly, though.
Yeah, and I thought it was neat that they named him Dan, because like I just thought of martial arts, where that's the word for someone's rank, right? So it's kind of like how they're growing in knowledge and experience and everything. So yeah, perfect for a Padawan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and the interactions between him and the master are so good, where the master is just like so laid back. And you have that kind of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan thing going on, where the master's so laid back and the Padawan is very sarcastic and just openly so. And the master just like ignores it, just completely keeps going.
There's an element there too that I totally thought of Obi-Wan and Anakin, because Anakin, at least when he's a Padawan, he's got a bit more sarcasm than Obi-Wan did, but
yeah.
I couldn't help but think, just, you know, at least with David Harbour's portrayal, you know, vocally speaking, I just thought, you know, if he's got as any part of his Jedi tasks, you know, as a high school teacher, I'm thinking, if this guy's got any lecturing that's on his, you know, sort of to-do list back home, he's got to be putting people to sleep.
Oh yeah.
It's just so like completely mellow. Like very, you know, like very monotone sometimes, and I just like I don't know why I really liked it, but it was just sort of weird too. It was a little off-putting almost. It's like he's too calm. I don't know.
But he would probably handle a rowdy classroom with ease.
He just stares them down, and then they're like, okay, yeah, yeah. Slowly pulls the row back just enough to, you know, see the lightsaber there. You know, he's like, oh, I'm just fixing my belt. Yeah.
One of the other cool things about this episode was there was a number of just kind of little, I guess I would call them sort of philosophy gems that were kind of just scattered throughout the episode. And so one of them even came right here at the beginning, and because Dan is, you know, wanting excitement and action and adventure. And the master tells him, the seeds of misfortune, when in peaceful soil, can be easy to overlook. And I thought that this was a very profound and interesting statement to think about, because Dan is almost wanting some big misfortune, not because he wants there to be evil, but he wants to be able to attack the evil, and he wants, the big scale fight. And they're heading to the Outer Rim where it's fairly peaceful. And with that, he's going to overlook just the ordinary kind of things that he could do to help out. And so I appreciated that, because often, like I said, the temptation is kind of to look almost too big and to forget to notice that, like, we can still change the world in our own households, our own communities, and we don't have to necessarily like fight that big, ambiguous sort of, dragon, when we can do things right here in our own backyard, and those are often the first to be overlooked.
I like that it was a non-canon piece of wisdom that fit with the mentality of a Jedi, and that to me was really great, because it wasn't that they just didn't grab something out of the box that's already there, right? Because the immediate response you come up with as a viewer knowing Star Wars is the Yoda issues about conflict, and all of that stuff, like, kind of dumps in there, and then he says something completely different. You're like, oh wow, this guy's wise in a different way.
He also does something interesting, in the same vein, just right after that, because the Master senses this disturbance in the Force, and they come out of hyperspace. And Dan, of course, again, is hoping almost that it's a Sith so he can go fight. And the Master tries to sort of temper Dan's desire to fight. And he says something, again, interesting. He says, a Jedi does not seek aggressions. A Jedi must find balance and stillness. And so this was also, at least in my recollection, it totally fits the Jedi, the Jedi way, but it was almost like a new take on the Jedi code. And so I really appreciated that, because I don't like the Jedi code. If you kind of parse it out, it's very stoic. There's no emotion, there's peace, there's no ignorance, there's knowledge, there's no passion, there's serenity, there's no chaos, there's harmony, there's no death, there's the Force. And I've never really liked it, because it sort of denies our humanity. Like,
it's just it's a list of denials, right?
Right. And
I feel like someone threw that together before a board meeting. Where they're like, oh, I was supposed to have that ready today. Oh, okay, there is no.
But it makes sense, because I'm on one level, like because you pit that against the Sith, and you've got kind of both ends of the both extremes of, one is all about passion and embracing, your emotions and anger and all of that, and the Jedi code is sort of a negation of all of that. But there's still like this denial of like, we can actually harness our passions for good, and our emotions, can lead us down the road of right and just. And I'm not really wanting to necessarily debate that, but what I liked about what the Master says is he didn't really, it was sort of implicitly referenced, but he was just talking about, a Jedi does not seek out aggressions, but a Jedi finds balance and stillness. And I felt like that was an appropriate way to say all that, because it doesn't reject emotion or passion, but it's all about finding the balance, and even stillness, but you can still feel things and have that interior balance and stillness. And of course, it wouldn't do anyone good to seek out aggressions, because that can lead you, of course, to embracing the wrong kind of anger and emotions.
And it plays out through the rest of the episode too, when we find the emotional connection that the Padawan is able to make with the village kids, right? Just playing with them and being kind of a childlike figure with them as well. And that's not the stoic, removed, emotionless way, right? But it's the just living life where you are. And that ends up serving them in the end, because the kids then are able to show them the way up the mountain. And, there's all these different things that happen because he's open to the experience that they're having.
I thought that was brilliant, because I've done that too. where like, you know, the blink or the wink one eye and then wink the other eye. And then like, you know, trying to get, you know, either my nieces and nephews or, you know, toddlers, like it is like the coolest thing, you know, that you can do that. And of course they try it and they can't quite figure it out. So you were just this super cool person. And so I very much related
from
to that.
afar.
Yeah,
like because I do the same thing if you do like the, you know, pretend to like blow on your hand like it's a balloon and make shapes and stuff. They're just like anything like that. This is just it's such a sweet, subtle little thing that they put in there. I liked that too.
And that's the way to connect to kids. I mean, you show them something fun like that, and yeah, Thomas, you're right. It's not devoid of emotion. There's a bit of mischievousness there that allows him to connect, and that's good. That's not something to be rejected. And so at that point too, yeah, the kids, the kids ultimately help Dan kind of go into the mountains, but the master talks to the villagers and finds out that there was this elder from some unknown tribe that stopped in on the planet. And so the master thinks that this elder is someone that they need to go check out, because he very likely is the disturbance in the force that he felt. And so they do decide to investigate, and they broke the cardinal rule of any horror movie. They decide to split up. And not to make this a bad an episode on commentary on parenting, but letting the children, he's like, the mountains are dangerous. Get yourself a guide. And then it's like, the kids. I'm like, what?
Let them go first.
Hold on. That was that was like, of all the things in the episode, for some reason that stuck with me for like a good 2 minutes. So I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, no, I gotta let this go. This is okay. Back to what we're doing. But it also makes sense in context too. Like, they probably know those mountains like the back of their hands. You know, that's their playground. They're well versed in how to avoid. I forget the name of those. We didn't get to see a live one of those. What was it called?
Vamga?
Yeah. Kind of wish we could have seen a live one.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to. I mean, they kind of set it up, at least narratively, that we would have. Well, we did see one, but just not a live one.
Well, I think we needed to know how dangerous they were to then have the surprise of, we found one dead. That's
right.
That's true.
Yep.
So maybe that's in the deleted scenes that we missed.
It's the rest of the hour-long version of this, this episode.
Hour and a half of deleted scenes. Like, what?
One can hope, right?
So it's decided that the master is going to stay behind because he's better with ships. I'm not sure. I feel like Dan was just like making the excuses of like, this is why I want to go to the mountains. And he's like, you're better with ships, so you go stay with the ship.
And I was kind of like, well, then why were you flying the ship just a few minutes ago?
Right. And he never gets on the ship. Just sort of stands out there like with a communicator, like, yes, Dan.
I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but when I saw the Sith ship, it looks like the very front part of Darth Vader's helmet. It's kind of got the triangle kind of I don't know if that was intentional or not, but that's where my mind went.
I was thinking of Kylo's shuttle a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of combined elements, definitely.
I think so, yeah.
They kind of dug around and said, okay, what would a Sith ship look like? Which I have to say, I was really impressed with both of the ships that we saw in this episode, because the ship that they come in on is nothing like really anything that we've seen, but it fits so well. It's very much a Star Wars ship.
Yeah, and this one too. It Star Wars is, I mean, that ship is. I guess you would call Star Wars more a science fantasy than a science fiction, and so it felt like it belonged. And you just don't think about necessarily how that Sith ship works too closely,
right.
You know, but it works. And of course they're planting the seeds here too, that they think that this might be a Sith, but they're sort of also alluding to the fact that the Sith have been extinct for hundreds of years. So they're not quite sure what to expect with this elder.
That's what made me think High Republic, because isn't it basically canon, basically, that by the time of the original trilogy, the Sith's been gone for 1,000 years, or give or take? I think they say that in the prequels, don't they?
They say that this one happens just before the Phantom Menace. That's the trigger. The guys who produced it. They said that this one is just prior to the Phantom Menace.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
So it should lead into the Phantom Menace the way that Rogue One leads into the original trilogy.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, and that fits at least.
Well, the Sith aren't gone either. We know that, of course. Right. But yeah.
Well, and I mean, even Sith in general are it's like this. The Elder is clearly a Sith, but he's also not a Sith. And so, like,
well, it's kind of like Ahsoka, right? Like, she's not a Jedi, but she's kind of a Jedi. You know,
right?
I think of it as the same thing.
Well, and I guess I've always wondered about that. Like at this point in the canon, like there's two Sith, the rule of two. Who's to say that there's not a Jedi who's gone dark that's outside of the two, you know, and they're just a dark Jedi, but not a Sith. Like they're
not organized. I think that's kind of the idea behind the Sith and the Jedi, is sort of the institutionalization of it. You know?
Okay. Well, that helps, because the at least some of the Legends novels post Return of the Jedi have really kind of they've dealt with this. Like they end up discovering a whole planet of Sith, and Sith becomes like a culture more than like just like a Jedi or a Force user who's dark.
Well, back in the day, before the reboot, there was a people that were called Sith, and that's where the name came from. And so it was they were dark Force users. That was like their entire culture was built on that, and then they passed that on to Revan eventually, but through before him some other Jedi as well. So I don't know. I would like to see that explored a little more deeply in the newer canon to figure out where it all fits.
There is a rumor of a Old Republic movie potentially in the works. So I would love to see something like that, but we might get some of that. But I'm not sure. So the Sith kind of identity sort of comes up. Dan, after he comes across the Vamga, he realizes that it was killed with a lightsaber blade, and he is then encountered by this Elder, and the Elder recognizes Dan as a Jedi. And this is where we have an interesting point that the Elder makes. Dan asks him if he's a Sith, and the Elder responds that the Sith became far too obsessed with trying to outwit each other, and therefore they neglected their destiny and they are extinct. And so that's where the rule of two kind of boiled down to. But even in general, I think the rule of two would be incredibly horrible to live out. Like, you know, and of course that's kind of the point. But
right. I was going to say, well, they are Sith.
But like, I almost feel bad for someone like Count Dooku, who is like never really going to do anything as a Sith Lord. He was just like a temporary placeholder until Anakin Skywalker was the right moment for him to come in and become a Sith himself.
And then Darth Maul himself, who was one of the Sith and then was not anymore. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. But he sort of, spoiler alert, he's survived, episode 1. If you haven't watched the Clone Wars, go back and watch the Clone Wars. And of course, if you've seen Solo, he's in Solo as well.
And if you didn't watch Clone Wars and saw Solo, like some of my friends were so completely confused. It's understandable. Right? Like, I thought that dude got cut in half. Like, we'll talk later.
Then he had spider legs, and then he didn't have spider legs.
Yeah, it's like I don't know where to like, how much do I tell them? Yeah.
It's a thing.
And then some ghost witches like gave him, it's like, what?
I like Thomas's, it's a thing. That's what I'm going to say from now on. I'm like, trust me. No.
Wait, you mean he fell a great distance? Yeah, he's not dead in Star Wars terms.
That's like what you do if you want someone to survive.
Right? Just throw him off a cliff.
Yeah. So, but he's an interesting one too, because no longer Sith, but he still at least kind of dabbles in on all things dark and the crime syndicate and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, he's out of the institutional Sith thing, but still a bad guy. Dan and the Elder engage in their fight, and Thomas, I didn't really have much to say here, so if you have more to say on the fight, please jump in.
So this is it's actually really funny because they kind of turned a historical figure on his head here. With Miyamoto Musashi was known for being a braggart and a duelist, and he's normally thought of as generally a positive figure. I mean, he wrote one of the best treatises on swordsmanship in the history of anything written about swordsmanship, but he used two blades, and he loved dueling, and he always wanted to be up against the best challenger. That's what he was looking for, was a real challenge to be able to fight against. And so when he starts sparring with Dan here, that's what I thought of immediately, was just this figure of the swordsman. That's what he wants to do, is just win a truly difficult battle or lose trying. And that's the way that he wants to be. And so when he finds out that Dan's really not, all that, he's like, okay, never mind, you're not the one I want. I felt a presence in the Force. This is not you. And that's kind of where this is coming from, is that sense of the samurai, because there were a lot of points where there was peace amongst the different warring houses in Japan, but these guys were swordsmen. That's what they did. They lived and breathed that every day of their life. And so there were a lot of times where they would be in fights that had nothing to do with honor or what your lord wanted. It's just, I've heard you're really good with a sword, let's go. And that's the way they would happen. One of the greatest stories I have, and we'll come back to talking about the fighting style that the master uses, but one of the greatest stories that I've read is about the development of this martial arts style that was about using open hand, so no weapons. And the blade master who told his apprentices to go out and discover this, when they came back, one of them said, I've got it. I'm ready to teach this to everyone. He said, okay, well, you need to show it to me, and told the guy to give up his blade and then walk out onto the battlefield, and immediately attacked him with his sword as he was walking away from him. And the guy, fortunately for him, actually knew his stuff and disarmed the master immediately. It was able to throw him on the ground and disarm him. And afterwards, all the apprentices asked him, were you really going to kill him? And the master said, well, I mean, if his technique wasn't worthwhile, then yeah, I mean, it needed to be an actual combat situation for me to see that he was going to, that he learned what he needed to learn. And so that's kind of the way these guys thought, was just the mastery of combat was everything to them. The Bushido, that's what they did, was they became the best at what they, and so when they didn't have anything to fight for, when there was no war, very much like Dan, interestingly, they still wanted to use the blade. They still wanted to prove their prowess, to prove all the things that they'd learned.
I almost wonder if you were to compare the Elder's fighting style with Asajj Ventress's style, if they would be similar, because that's kind of the character that I was thinking of, just in terms of canon characters that we know.
I would say they were very close, yeah. Very quick, rapid movements, lots of... it was a very real fighting style that he was using, too. The one sword over the shoulder, one sword at the side, and then cutting across twice, and having the blades on the other side. That very much choreographed very well.
Yeah, and she also was pretty... I mean, throughout the fights that we saw with her that were kind of more lengthy, we could see that she was the type to kind of mock you and comment about how interesting you were, as a fighter, as an opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I found that actually really interesting on a on a spiritual level too, because Thomas, you actually mentioned that he's sort of the demon kind of character, and so like he is mocking Dan and like pointing out Dan's insecurities as he's fighting, and he's telling him that he's boring, and that he's gonna kill him, and that's how the master's gonna show himself. He's saying that he's not strong in the Force, and this is very this is similar tactics to how Satan attacks us by trying to point out our insecurities and our own fears, and it's pretty clear. I mean, Dan is not boring, or he's not no small fry when it comes to the Force, but the Elder is trying to get him to falter and to give in to that fear of his own insecurities, and that's exactly how the spiritual life, how the enemy tries to pull us down as well.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but when they're on the ship and he's talking about how he wants to see some action and he's ready to fight, and then here's this fight, and you're right, that was kind of the thing that he wanted to be good at, and then when it came down to it, he wasn't ready for a Sith. He wasn't ready for that action, and my mind goes back to that scene where we just see for a brief moment, we see Dan's side profile, and he's like gulping, like, oh, like, oh my gosh, just taking that deep breath to try to recover from that insult that he got, that he wasn't the one that was strong with the Force.
But he will be, and that was kind of one of the things at the end of the episode that the master kind of points out to him, like, you're going to continue to grow and you're going to get stronger, and there's, as much as they are a master and apprentice relationship, this was also a kind of a father-son sort of mentorship too, which was nice to see. I also thought that Dan was killed in that moment, so I was very happy.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised he wasn't.
And he recovered. I don't know how fast, but it seemed like they must have had to have been there for a while before they left, because I can't imagine that was, an easy wound to recover from.
It's cauterized, like, if it doesn't go all the way through, you're good.
It's just a
flesh wound sealed back up.
Well, what could have happened is the master could have just put his hand on the wound and tried really hard.
I was legitimately wondering about that. I was like, dude, if this guy's really strong with the Force, then did he Force heal him or what?
I'm still not there on that one, but that's a whole other show.
They only had 20 minutes to tell the story. They couldn't do all of it.
They do imply there is a bit of time passing though, because when the master shows up, the Elder is like sitting, and sitting and waiting for the master to show up. So yeah, what that timetable is, we have no idea, but there is some time that has passed. And then at that point is the fight with the Elder and the master. And
the rain pours down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't affect his hair, but does affect his lightsaber.
Yeah, there was steam.
And by the way, we're liking that Kylo saber sound effect package, aren't we? Because I think I think it's pretty awesome, but it's so clearly that, it was pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. Anything to mention on the fight here, Thomas?
Yes, it's beautiful. I love it. It is absolutely amazing. When he disarms the Elder, that is a classic move. Perfect way to deal with fighting against someone that has two blades. You want to disarm him, and the way he does it, it's just so wonderfully choreographed, the whole thing. But yeah, it's very much back to that kind of the stoic, the calm motion of the Jedi as he's dealing with everything that this chaotic, unpredictable opponent is throwing at him, and it shows that he's much more mature not only as a bladesman, or as a swordsman, but as a force user, because none of the things that the elder says ruffle him. They don't get him out of sorts. The only thing that throws him off is seeing the lightning technique. But even then, it's only for a moment, and he knows exactly what to do to deal with it, even though it's something that he's probably never seen before, but only read about or heard about. And that's when he got my most respect. I mean, he had my respect from the beginning, but I just loved, like, you see that coming, and your reaction is that technique. Just David, like it was such a David Harbour type thing. It was so funny. I love that line. That was one of my favorites. That technique.
He didn't use the Yoda technique where you just like absorb it into your hands like he did in episode 2, but you know, deflected it with his blade, which was not something Luke was able to do in Return of the Jedi. So it's not something that just comes to your mind when you're fighting against someone with Force lightning. So something that I don't know fight technique, but something that I picked up on in this particular fight was we really see the masters being very deliberate and very intentional, especially highlighted when he finally takes out his opponent, just to see, you know, they use distraction against the opponent. And then, thanks to Dan, of course. And then, you know, one hand of the elder is armed with the lightning and the other with the lightsaber. And yet, even with those two, the Jedi is so composed that he's able to plan exactly what he's going to do. He just puts his unarmed saber, his, I guess, retracted saber right to his chest and then ignites it. And I thought that was amazing.
Finally, somebody turned the lightsaber off and turned it back on again. Like, there has been so much discussion about that.
Kylo does it with the guy's head behind him. Yeah, very quickly, room, right? But I thought this was so much cooler though. He's just like, and I'm done with this. Bam,
But very, very deliberate. I mean, he even like holds it against his chest for like a couple like heartbeats before he ignites the blade.
That really impressed me.
Yeah, well, I don't ever expect
anybody who's
to be
not familiar with anybody who's not familiar with anime, dramatic pauses like that are a mainstay. Like lots of going back and forth between people's faces while they're waiting to do their next move. Yeah,
I mean, I think I needed those heartbeats or whatever, however you want to put it, just to kind of grasp what was happening. I even went back and rewound it a couple times just to see that again and to kind of watch how Dan's lightsaber came in. And I wasn't even sure what happened with that lightsaber. So yeah, it was very well done. And it was, it was a short fight. Both of them were short fights, but very memorable.
It doesn't need to be drawn out. And again, this goes back to the choreography tells such a beautiful story about the characters. It tells how deliberate the Jedi is versus how chaotic and unpredictable and dangerous the Sith is. And the dialogue's great, but you really have to move out of just the sword fighting happening and the dialogue telling the story into the sword fighting telling the story of who these characters are.
And it's almost contrary to maybe our movie action sensibilities. And what I mean by that is I remember like when episode 3 was going to come out in theaters, like one of the biggest things was how long the lightsaber battle was going to be between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. And as a fan of that kind of action, it was super exciting and it was a great battle. But it tells a whole different story than a short, small, deliberate, 30-second battle, which was this one compared to a, I don't know, 20 minutes or however long that one dragged out. And so, yeah, it kind of, different way of storytelling, but also very, very good.
That's part of the reason that I really like the fight between Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, the final battle.
Yeah.
Because it's that same thing where it's short. And it doesn't need to be long. There's no point in it being long. It is the culmination of the two characters finally meeting each other and the control that Obi-Wan has been able to come to over himself and the just absolute frayed ends that Maul is at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's even like you can get a David and Goliath thing potentially with something like that. And maybe not in this one because, well, at least because the guy's so small. You tend to think of Goliath as big. I know I don't have a lot of good things to say about the 2004 Troy movie. However, that very first scene, I do remember how cool that was in the theater, at least, when you're sort of expecting this big fight between Achilles and this big dude, big guy beating his chest type thing, and then just like duck, jump up, stab, done, and then you're kind of like, oh crap, like that's like, that's it. The subtlety of, like you could run around hitting your swords together for 20 minutes, but then your sword's all messed up and and
you're exhausted.
But yeah, that's right. And so I know nothing about, sword choreography and that kind of stuff, but I've really enjoyed, there's a couple cool YouTube videos with some sword fighting experts breaking down the different, lightsaber duels and stuff. And it's funny. A lot of times it's like some of the ones I really like are the ones that are the worst, from an actual, like how this would go sort of way.
Oh,
but, yeah. But that's why this one just felt different and just felt more authentic, I guess, is how I saw it. So,
and it's so good
Thomas, you're telling me I saw it right.
Right. No, yeah, absolutely 100%. Because there's been so many times, as a fencer, you would watch the really good bouts, and the really good bouts were long pauses where the two are just flicking their swords at each other and, testing the defenses, and nothing's really happening. It looks really boring. And then all of a sudden everything happens and it's done. And you have to kind of take a minute to breathe and rewind in your head everything that just happened to figure out, like you were saying, Angela, where you're like watching this and it's like, wait a minute, what exactly went on there? And so that's a great battle because that's the way it happens. That's the way it really works. And fencing is obviously just a sport version of it, but from everything that I've read, that's the way martial arts always has been. And the real battles are always that way, where there's a great scene in The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise that he has learned how to do all of the Bushido. He's been practicing with a practice sword, and he's confronted with his first moment of actually fighting. And it's over very quickly. Like it's instantaneous what happens. And then he sits there for a minute and processes the whole thing. And he visually slows it down in his mind so that he's doing all the forms through the entire combat and sees everything that he just did. And it's like, that's the way it feels, where you've just practiced. Your sword moves here, your sword moves here, your sword moves here. And it just happens when you're on the battlefield, when you're actually in that moment, your body knows how to do it. And that's what you're supposed to do as a martial artist.
Well, and it makes total sense on a practical level too, that you don't want a fight like that to be drawn out, because you're gonna lose energy. You're gonna be more likely to die the longer that the battle goes. So you wanna shut down your opponent as quickly as possible, and not engage in 20 minutes of swordplay. So yeah, this fight was quick and very, very insightful. So Thomas, I appreciate your your background there. This pretty much kind of concludes the episode, more or less. There was the elder does remotely blow up his ship and his body disintegrates, so they have nothing to go on who he was or his background as potential Sith.
Which means we have nothing to go on.
Unless they write a novel or do something. And then it kind of ends with the master and Dan kind of reflecting on the battle, and again sort of a bit of sage wisdom here. And the master is very modest, and in fact he says that the only reason that he beat the elder was because the elder was old. And so he said, what defeated the elder in the end was not me, but time. He couldn't win against the weakness that comes with age. No matter how powerful you become, know it will not last forever. And so I appreciated this because it speaks to the reality that he recognizes that, I mean, ultimately everything in this world will pass away. Like even our strength, we're gonna kind of peak in our physical strength, and it'll decline. And on this side of heaven, that's nothing's forever.
Yeah, I was just struck by the timing of us watching this episode this week, because this week being Christ the King, and that is very much a theme, right? That, Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this world. So in other words, like, having power for its own sake is pretty much useless. And it's like the master says to Dan, right? Like, with power, you can protect those without it. And that's what makes it useful in the end. So, I thought that was really neat, just the timing of it.
And then he ends by basically telling Dan, that he's going to get stronger. But ultimately, he says, do not forget your training and your kindness. And so I appreciated that. And he then encourages Dan to go say goodbye to his the village kids that he has made friends with, again, to kind of echo those kind of relationships and the kindness that he showed them. And those are the things that ultimately will not pass away. Love will not pass away, but everything that we do in this world should be geared in that direction.
I looked up the specific word for kindness, and I went through all kinds of stuff to try to, because I don't speak Japanese. So I literally was there like with Google Translate, like conversation mode, like on my phone and my laptop speakers, like all the way up. And I played that particular quote. And then I tried to like break it down, like as far as the characters, like, okay, which of these say kindness, right? So it took me a while. But because, knowing other languages, like I was like, okay, kindness, like that's a broad concept. Like, what does that mean for this particular word in Japanese? And I wanted to know, because it was sort of like the whole lesson for Dan, right?
Right.
So I looked it up, and it's yasashi. And that means in Japanese, kind, gentle, tender, affectionate, graceful, and amiable. And of the examples that I saw as I was looking through the use of this word in context, they all had to do with relationships between loved ones. So like an embrace of a mother and a father, or how a sister speaks to, another sibling, that kind of kindness. So I thought that was really very interesting on the level of, what Dan took away from it. It's not just being kind as in, extending, thinking of another person, or extending a hand, or, that kind of kindness, but it's something that's tender, something that is gentle. And so very much when you bring that into the context of his relationship with the children, then I thought that was a beautiful lesson, because, here is this power versus humility lesson, right? And children are always the primary example for that.
Well, and he's probably learning too that, I mean, he wanted the excitement, he wanted the fight, he wanted the action. And, his master is teaching him that the relationships, that love, that kindness is actually more important than going out to find the next battle.
Now, I was really happy, like coming back around full circle to talking about the production company that made this, because Trigger is awesome. They have a lot of really great stuff, but what you have to imagine all of their anime is the twins episode and this mashed together. So the seriousness and the gravity and depth that this one has, but also the silliness and the kind of just over the top ridiculous nature of the twins episode get combined in a lot of the stuff that they do. So if you're looking for anime stuff, then yeah, they have that very much that feel going on with all of their anime.
I'm intrigued. Okay. Any other final thoughts on this story arc before we wrap things up?
I just wanted to mention again, since sometimes we talk about the music, that it was definitely different, I think, from the other Visions episodes that we've seen. But it was, again, as the twins episode was, it was again done by Michiru Oshima. Just a quick refresher, she has won many Japanese Academy Awards. And so, yeah, I think she's definitely made an impression on me, just from these 2 episodes and other things that I've looked up because of her composing the music for these 2 episodes.
I definitely stayed with the credits all the way through that last song. It was so good.
The only other thing that I would point out too is that the art style was also really cool, and it fit, and it was dark, and I mean just added to the sense of kind of sinister and foreboding of that encounter that they have with the elder. So the art on this was also really well done.
I have to say, before we end though, I have to say Master Crosser is my favorite Jedi, like hands down. I love his character. I love what he stands for. I love the way that he approaches the Force and the Jedi Code. And Qui-Gon is always held like a really high regard for me in that same way. But this is even a step beyond that, in my opinion, of really understanding the depth and nature of the Force. And it's done in like a 20-minute block, which is just fantastic.
Well, and I mean, I think there is hope. They haven't formally announced anything, but if this did well enough, there could be a Vision season 2, and perhaps they would come back to play with some of these characters that we've barely gotten to know. So we'll see. There's a lot coming in the next year, but I imagine they would do something with Visions again. So it's sort of the Star Wars version of What If, and I think that appeals to a lot of people. Yes. So, I think that I they would get an audience for this if they did more of it. So that does conclude our discussion on The Elder. Listeners, we want to know what you thought of The Elder, and you can let us know in all sorts of ways. You can email us your feedback at starwars@sqpn.com. And you can let us know on our Facebook or Twitter page. And we are on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. And you can tweet at us and follow us on Twitter at SQPN. We'd like to take a moment now to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including Father Brian M., Joshua M., Matthew W., John F., and Paul J. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows that we make here at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, another plug, if you want to get your own official Secrets of Star Wars t-shirt or various merch, we have coffee mugs, stickers, magnets, and the like that encapsulates our philosophy of finding hope in a galaxy far, far away. You can purchase all of those items and more by going to sqpn.com/merch. They make excellent Christmas gifts. Hint, hint, wink, wink. They're also really cool. So please go check that out. And also make sure, of course, that you are subscribed to the show so you don't miss a single episode. You can find us in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, your favorite podcast player, and you can find us on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just make sure to click that bell to get notifications of every new episode. And you can find all of our previous episodes by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back next week as we will take a deeper look into the 8th episode of Star Wars Visions, Lop and Ocho. So until next time, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
It's been great.
Mike Creevy, thanks for joining us this evening as well.
Hey, anytime.
And Angela Cialana, always a pleasure to have you on board as well.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Am I doing better?
You're doing great. It's sounding good.
And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.